Going abroad to South Korea for free is actually possible. Why? Because I did it. My tuition, my program fee, living expenses, and housing were all covered by scholarship. By the end of this video, you'll know which scholarships I applied to, how I was able to stand out in all of my applications, and how you can find funding too. Hi everyone, I'm Florisha and I studied abroad in South Korea 2 years ago. And as you can tell, I did it for free, okay? Everything was free. And I want to share my journey and how I got there with you. I'll be reading off my iPad because I have a lot of notes. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm just making sure I'm sharing the correct information with y'all, okay? In this video, I'll be going into great details about my journey and how I was able to go to study abroad in Korea for free. If you're looking for quick answers there and there, this video may not be for you because I'm giving you all like my all. Like I'm giving all the details on how I was able to do that. So I just want to let you know, but I definitely will add chapters. So if you're interested, keep watching. Before we get into the scholarships, I'm going to share a little bit about me as a student so that you can understand my situation and where I was coming from. So at the time, I was a declared sociology major. I was a communications coordinator within a student cultural club. I was an office assistant at my alma mater's academic advising department. And I'll be talking about my alma mater, which is Brandeis, a lot in this video because they played a huge role in my experience going abroad. And lastly, I was a peer mentor for first generation students who also came from a low income family background. At the time that I applied to study abroad, my GPA was a 3.9. However, I will say that when it comes to Americans applying to study abroad, I feel like the requirements are a little bit more lenient. And so having the highest GPA is really not that all important. It's about meeting the requirements for whichever program that you're applying for. So I studied abroad with ciee and they had a GPA requirement, which I think was a 2.0 and above. And then my alma mater Brandeis also had a requirement for a GPA, and I believe that that was 3.0, but Yonsei also had a GPA requirement, and I'm sure it's also a 2.0 GPA or higher. So as long as you meet the requirements of all the programs or the steps that you need to take in order to get abroad, that's really all that matters. So at the time when I was thinking about studying abroad, I chose to go through the study abroad program called ciee because it was partnered with Yonsei. I did have the option of choosing Korea University, but I specifically wanted to go abroad to Yonsei for specific reasonings, which I talk about in this video up here. So if you're interested in me explaining why I chose South Korea and why I chose Yonsei, definitely go check out that video. And most importantly, I was a first generation student who came from a low income family background. For those who are also first gen and come from low income family backgrounds, they understand that like we can't really rely on our parents or our family members to contribute to the expenses of study abroad because it's so expensive. Even though I was a first gen coming from a low family income background, I still was able to not let my financial state determine where I went abroad. And sometimes I think that as first gen and students who come from low income family backgrounds, we feel constrained by our financial background and we feel limited on what we can do. But obviously my story defies that belief. Now for the part that everybody wants to know, what did it actually cost to study abroad in Korea? So I'm gonna break it down for y'all, okay? So the big expenses were my tuition. I didn't know that even when you're abroad, you still have to pay tuition. Like I still had to pay Brandeis tuition, even though I wasn't at the institution for that semester, which to me, I feel like is a ripoff. Like, why are you asking students to pay for tuition if they're going abroad? But anyways, I digress. So Brandeis's tuition was around $31,000 for that semester. And then the flight to Korea, because I bought it 2 months late, was $2,500, which was partly my fault. And then my study abroad program fee plus housing was around $3,100. And again, these are all like estimates, but these are really close to what the real prices were. And so now I'm going to be talking about all the aid that I received. So I went to Brandeis on a full ride. And so my full ride covered tuition, housing, basically everything. It covered everything, thankfully. So my full ride aid was $41,000. Brandeis's intuition was $31,000. And so after I was able to pay off Brandeis tuition, I had about $10,500 left. And now to break down the $10,500, so $5,000 was for the Gamet scholarship, and then the other $5,000 was a leftover from my full ride scholarship because I didn't have to pay room and board. So that left me around between $10,000 to $10,500. Now that I had $10,000 from the Gamet and my full ride scholarship, I also had an additional $5,000 from the Freeman Asia scholarship, which in total gave me $15,000 in scholarship to pay for all the expenses for South Korea. So now with the $15,000, I paid off my flight, which was $2,500, and then I also had to pay off my study abroad program fee, which included paying for housing at Yonsei University. And so that amount was $3,100. So subtracting those expenses from the $15,000, it left me with around $9,000 to $8,000, which was leftover money I used for living expenses abroad in South Korea. So the entire semester I spent in Korea was fully funded by scholarships. But if you want a more in-depth video on how I spent my money in Korea being a student at Yonsei University, definitely check out this video. I talk about how much I spent for meals, how much I spent on laundry, how much I spent on transportation. So that gives you guys a much more in-depth or detailed information on how I spent my money. And so now I'm just going to talk about the few things that I spent out of pocket. So I had to pay for my Korean visa. So before I studied abroad, I went to the Korean consulate. My visa was around $45 USD. And then like the clothes, the toiletries, my suitcase, or anything like personally that I bought prior to going to Korea was like what I paid for. But once I was there, that 9K was more than enough to sustain all of my living expenses while I was abroad in Korea. So I didn't have to use any more out-of-pocket money. Like everything was used from the scholarship money. But I will say, guys, little tip, please make sure you take account of this. I'm a girly. I packed 2 big suitcases. And when I was leaving America to go to Korea, they didn't charge me for my overweight bags. Like they were like over 50 pounds, I'm pretty sure. But when I was in the Incheon airport and my guy saw my suitcase and it was over 50 pounds, he said, "Baby, that's $100." I said, $100? Guys, I kid you not, I wanted to cry. Mind you, I had 2 suitcases and I didn't buy a carry-on, which was dumb. I should have bought a carry-on. So I had to pay $200 because of my overweight suitcases. I just want to let y'all know that. And $200 was a lot. I was not happy about that. So just keep that in mind. So now we're going to talk about scholarships. My biggest tip to y'all is to apply to everything. That is how I was able to go to Korea for free. Because once you stack up all the money that you can earn from your scholarships, it can cover all of the study abroad expenses. You know how people say like a little leads to a grand amount? That's what I did. I personally applied to 4 scholarships to cover all of my expenses for Korea. So I'm gonna mention all the scholarships here, but I'm not gonna go into like full detail about the requirements for each of them. I'm only gonna highlight the important key ones, but you also like need to do your own research and check out the links to the scholarships that I do mention in this video. So the first scholarship that I applied to was the Gamet scholarship. It requires applicants to write a 1-page essay, and then it offers up to $5,000 per semester. And like I said, it's only specifically for Brandeis students, but it also has its own like GPA requirement and all that. I'll link that scholarship down below in the description box for my fellow Brandesian students who are watching this video. If you are, you know, let me know. And then the second scholarship that I applied to was Freeman Asia. And this scholarship required applicants to write 2 essays, and it offers up to $7,000. And it's for US citizens, and it's for students specifically studying in the continent of Asia. And you also need to demonstrate a need for financial aid. And then the third scholarship I applied to was another Brandeis scholarship. It's called SACR. I'm sure that the SACR scholarship requirement has changed since I've like left Brandeis, but from what I know, I believe it requires applicants to write 2 essays. It offers up to $1,500, and it's specifically for Brandeis students, but again, it has its own additional requirements. And then the last scholarship that I applied to was Gilman, and Gilman requires applicants to write 3 essays. It offers up to $5,000. And so for the Gilman scholarship, you must be a US citizen, and you also have to be receiving a federal Pell Grant during your time of the application. If you do study abroad with CIEE, they automatically give students who apply to Gilman $200 off of their program fee for simply just applying to Gilman. It doesn't even matter if you win Gilman or if you don't receive the Gilman scholarship, you automatically get $200 off of your program fees. And like I said previously, try to take advantage of every opportunity you come across to lower your expenses for study abroad. It doesn't matter if it's $200, it doesn't matter if it's $1,000, $5,000, every dollar counts, especially if you want to go abroad for free. On top of that, if you decide to study abroad with CIEE, I have a referral link which will also decrease your program fees by $200. So that's another opportunity for you to get money off for your study abroad expenses. So now that's like $400, guys. That's what I'm saying. It just stacks up, okay? Also, with flights, CIEE sometimes provide students with a $1,000 voucher off of their flight. Unfortunately, I missed the email. My other friends who went abroad with me during the same time were like, yeah, I got the $1,000 flight voucher and da-da-da. And I'm like, where was my email? It's good to know that CIEE gives students a $1K flight voucher to decrease the amount of your flight when you come to Korea, which again is another opportunity to decrease your expenses. So here's actually what happened. I applied to Gamet, Sacker, and Freeman. I did not apply to Gilman because at the time I was a perfectionist. I felt like my application was super rushed. I wasn't happy with the outcome of my application, so I decided to not apply. Things still worked out for me, luckily, and I'm super grateful, but don't follow after me. Even if you feel like your application isn't perfect, still apply because you can still get the $200 from CIEE, and you never know the outcome of whether you'll get accepted or not. Always give yourself a shot rather than being like, oh, it's not worthy enough, okay? And then I had to reject the Sacker scholarship, which is the Brandeis specific scholarship, because I had so much scholarship money that it would have impacted my full ride. So I had to turn down the $1,000 that Sacker gave me to give to someone else. Now I am going to talk about the writing portion of my applications and how I was able to stand out and secure the bag, okay? I will be sharing the strategies that worked for me, and I'll show you how I applied them in my own essays so that you can make them your own. Your reason has to go deeper than just vibes. I didn't just say, oh, I love K-pop, I love K-drama, this is the reason why I want to go to South Korea, I want to go meet the idols, I want to go here, I want to go to every K-pop concert. Guys, be for real, who's going to give you the money to go to South Korea if you're just strictly saying you're going there because you love K-pop, you want to do things centered around K-pop? I mean, those are good reasons, right? I'm not going to judge you. If you want to go to Korea because you're a fan of K-pop, that's fine. However, when it comes to the people reviewing your applications and you're simply just talking about surface level things like K-pop, it isn't enough. Not at all. So I positioned myself as someone critically studying global media and marketing, not just consuming K-pop. So here's an example from my essay. I was introduced to South Korean culture through its cultural exports. I am interested in learning how the impacts of colonization and ideologies of race impact the ways South Korean industries are advertised, presented, and marketed within South Korea and globally. Therefore, at Yonsei University, I plan to take courses about Korean pop culture, society, digital media, and tactics in business marketing to understand the ways in which Korean media industries are distinctive. That's really good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna toot my own horn. And that's how I was able to expand on just being a fan of K-pop. Here are some things to write down. Ask yourself, what unique perspective do I bring? Does my why go beyond the desire to travel? Am I critically engaging with the culture? And then try to weave that into your essay. The second tip, be specific, be detailed as much as possible. So in my essays, I named courses, I quoted Yonsei University's mission, and I dropped statistics when it was appropriate. I believe this demonstrates how intentional I was and how I knew exactly what I planned to do. The more you're able to articulate your plan for studying abroad, the more the reviewers are willing to invest in that experience, as opposed to someone who doesn't seem like they have a plan or they have a vision or a purpose for going. And obviously, you don't have to stick to that purpose. You don't have to stick to that plan because things may change when you get there, or you may have other ideas or things that you want to do. Coming off initially through your essays that this is what you plan to do and there's a purpose for it, it makes your story more convincing to people who are reading it. And so here's an example from my essay. Based on their mission statement, the classes offered at Yonsei University are committed to producing world leaders and change makers that implement change for the greater good. The institution was founded by visionaries who recognize the value of education that transcends racial and national boundaries. And as a Black woman, I feel extremely welcomed to enter this community abroad. I think this example, one, again, shows that I did my research on Yonsei University, but I also talk about my identity as a Black woman, and I was able to make a connection. I was like, I, as a Black woman, connect to the values that Yonsei University stands for. Making connections, showing that you did research, it's tea, like people eat that up. So here's some more things to write down. Make it specific. Name courses, professors, or missions that connect to your goals. Tie your personal identity or values to the program's institution or Korean values. Show why you belong there. Show them you've thought this through. In my opinion, with writing, show and tell is everything. And that's how I feel like I was able to secure all of my scholarships. Because I didn't just make a claim, I backed it up with example, evidence, or perspective. The next tip is to make connections to your academic and career goals. And so I built my essays around my custom major. Obviously, not all of you may be able to do that, but again, this is just an example of how my academic endeavors connected with what I wanted to do abroad in South Korea, specifically at Yonsei University. In my essays, I showed how Yonsei classes uniquely fit with my major, and I explained how those courses will allow me to stand out as an aspiring global marketer. Here are examples from my essays, and here's when I'm specifically talking about academic goals. I am most excited to take the course Media Communication in Korea. This course is focused to help students become familiar with contemporary mass media and popular culture in Korea through reading theoretical concepts and Korean pop culture from academic perspectives. Altogether, critically analyzing how Korea industries have gained global presence complements my major studies. And now for the example where I'm specifically talking about my career goals and how that connects to my time abroad in Korea. Being a student at Yonsei University will perfectly complement my studies at Brandeis by providing supplementary foundational knowledge and skills needed to be successful in the social media industry business with an American and South Korean lens. In the social media industry, I'll be able to put into practice a perspective that is distinctively curated from my time in South Korea. I really show them how my studies and how my future career goals align with the experiences that I can only get at Yonsei. Again, I'm trying to make connections and again, proving why I belong there. How does these things connect to my time abroad? So here's some more things to write down. Frame study abroad as part of your bigger academic story. Show how it connects to the future you're building. Then show how this experience will give you something unique that sets you apart in your career. The next tip is to lead with curiosity, be open. Again, I'm saying this through the perspective as an American because I'm an American, but instead of centering America as the standard in my essays, I showed openness and willingness to be a dedicated learner from Korea, from its people, from its culture, from the nation, and through the institution like Yonsei itself. Here's a short example from my essay. I plan on entering South Korea with the mindset of an outsider who's there to learn and respect the culture and country through my studies at Yonsei. Here's some more things to write down. Show cultural humility. Come as a learner, but also be open to sharing and connecting through your own identity. Don't assume K-pop, K-dramas, or idols show you everything about Korea. You don't know it all, so be open to learn and expand on what you do know. In my personal opinion, again, maybe this is a hot take, don't come off as if you don't have anything to learn from the experience of studying abroad in Korea. K-dramas, K-pop idols, they don't represent the entirety of the nation, nor do they highlight the nuances that exist within Korean society. I think it's super important to be open to learn and or expand on what you already know. That's all I have to say on that, okay? My last tip is to think bigger than yourself. It's very common for the scholarships to ask you, how do you plan on helping students feel more comfortable studying abroad? Or how do you plan to share the experiences of your time abroad? Or how do you plan on making a difference through your time abroad? So here's a little example of what I proposed through one of my essays. According to NASFA, only 5.9% of Black students study abroad. I realized that I cannot limit my choice to study abroad because of the inevitable fear of my experience being impacted by my identity. The documentation of my trip can be utilized as a resource to encourage Black and POC students to study abroad in Asia and allow them to know that they can occupy spaces within Asian societies. And so here you can see that I talk about how my experience can be used as a catalyst to empower other students of my identity to go abroad, specifically in Asia, but also to take up space internationally. So again, you can see how I dropped a statistic that I searched up and did my research around, which is centered around my identity of being a Black woman in order to come up with my creative idea on how I can empower other students to also go abroad. So here are some more things to write down. Ask yourself, what unique perspective do I bring? And then weave that into the essay. So make connections to your identity, your race, your religion, your lived experiences, your culture. It really shows how you bring a unique perspective abroad. Before I wrap up this section, there's a more quick things that really helps me when applying. Do not leave parts of the prompt unanswered. Don't be repetitive. Every word counts. So don't go on about something for too long. Try to be super clear or succinct, or concise. There you go. Concise with what you're trying to articulate. Choose the right recommenders. For some of these scholarships, they may ask for a letter of recommendation, usually from a professor or an advisor and whatnot. Choose people that can talk highly of you, who know what you do in and outside the classroom, who know how to speak to your character, your personality, and just overall someone who could just hype you up in an essay, okay? Pick those people. All of your essays cohesive. Always connect back to your bigger why. Why Korea? Why Yonsei? Why you? And you can see that throughout my essays. I always tied it back to the bigger picture. Why Yonsei? Why Korea? And why me? Also use resources. I leaned heavily on the resources at Brandeis who provided students with writers to help look over my essays and make sure that they were grammatically correct or that they flowed easily. I worked closely with one woman and she challenged me so much with my essays. I low-key wanted to fight her. I was like, girl, this is enough. She was like, no, add more. She really pushed me in my writing and I feel like that's what made me stand out a lot. Now in this section, I'm gonna provide tips for finding scholarships. I found all of my scholarships through a variety of ways. I'm gonna mention all of them to y'all. So I attended my university study abroad fair. I had so many meetings with my study abroad advisor to really find every scholarship that I could apply to help with my expenses. I connected with students who went abroad already. And then I used Google. I use Google to search up scholarships that I could also apply to. Overall, there are so many scholarships for study abroad, and there are many scholarships for students of specific identities and backgrounds. I'm gonna mention a few types of scholarships, but I'm sure there's probably even more than what I'm already mentioning. So there are identity-based scholarships. And so those are scholarships for students who are first gen, Black, women of color. And then there are national scholarships. And then there are program-specific scholarships. And those are directly offered by the study abroad program. One of the program-specific scholarship is the one that I mentioned by CIEE, but also CIEE offers so much more scholarships than the one I mentioned. And then there is university-specific scholarships. So these are scholarships that are specifically for students at your own institution or at your own university. Be sure to do research and see whether there are scholarships available at your institution or your college, which I'm sure there are. There's so many ways, there's so many avenues to build up money in order to go abroad. And my study abroad office at Brandeis, they have a bunch of scholarships listed there for different students, for different criterias. I think not only for US students, I think they also have some scholarship for international students. And on that note, for any international student watching this video, I am so sorry. I don't know much about specific scholarships for you. I think that there are more opportunities for American students to find scholarships, and there's not that many scholarships for international students, but they do exist. I think that finding them is a lot much more challenging. So I apologize, this video is not that helpful for international students. All right, guys, this is the end of the video. I hope that I wasn't too long. I wanted to give you guys as much detail as possible so you can use my examples. Obviously, do not copy my examples verbatim. It just won't look good on your behalf, but try to make them your own. I think these are what really made me stand out, but I'm rooting for you. It's possible, especially if you're first gen or if you come from a low income family background or whatever obstacles that you have to overcome to study abroad. It's possible. Believe in yourself, do what you want to do. I forgot to mention earlier that an advisor told me to go somewhere cheaper because of my background, but I did not listen to her. I didn't take her advice to the heart. I was like, I'm going to do what I want to do to go abroad, and I did just that. And I'm here to tell you that you can too, and as challenging as it may be, still push through because it's possible, okay? And thank you so much for allowing me to play a role in your study abroad journey. If you want to see how I spent my time abroad in South Korea, check out this playlist, and I will be going there soon. So if you want to see what my life will look like in a couple of months, definitely subscribe, comment down below, like this video. It really helps me a lot. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. I will try to answer them to the best of my capabilities. But I love y'all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.